Tonight at 10, a series of major changes in the COVID travel rules announced by the government. The biggest change affects France, a major destination for British tourists, which now comes into line with other amber list countries.
What we want to do is provide a sense of certainty for people for the next period over August, so that people can enjoy their breaks.
So fully vaccinated travellers from France will no longer have to quarantine on arrival in England, and the changes come into force early on Sunday morning. Also tonight, all 16 and 17-year-olds in the UK are to be offered a COVID vaccine in the coming weeks. The sprinter from Belarus, who refused to return home for her own safety, has landed tonight in Poland.
Hannah Mills and Ailey McIntyre. It is gold for Great Britain.
And at the Games, Hannah Mills and Ailey McIntyre win gold in the sailing. Hannah is now the most successful female Olympic sailor of all time.
It's been one of the hardest weeks of my life, I'm sure for Ailey as well, just every day. Feeling sick, not being able to eat, just nerves building up, and yeah, the emotion of just, we've done it, it's over, we've done what we came here to do.
There's the
And 13-year-old Sky Brown took bronze in the skateboarding to become Britain's youngest ever Olympic medalist.
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News channel, an atrocious batting collapse sees England lose 6 wickets for just 22 runs, all out for 183. India on top at the first test.
Good evening. A series of significant changes to the COVID travel rules will come into force in the early hours of Sunday morning. France, which is of course a major destination for British tourists, is to be brought into line with other amber list countries. And those coming from France to England will no longer need to quarantine if they're fully vaccinated. Other changes include India, Bahrain, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates switching from red to amber, meaning that arrivals from those countries will no longer have to quarantine in government-approved accommodation. While Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Slovakia, Latvia, Romania and Norway will now be moved onto the green list. But Georgia and Mexico have now been added to that red list, which is the highest level of restrictions. With the latest, here's our transport correspondent, Caroline Davis.
A near-empty swimming pool, few tents pitched and no one propping up the bar. This would normally be the busiest time of year at this campsite in western France, but at the moment they're half empty.
Hopefully there'll be a flurry of last-minute campers.
We're hoping so, especially in September with the older couples who normally come who don't have families. I think it's too late for families to come because they will have booked elsewhere in the UK.
Across the Channel, these British holidaymakers are staying home.
With the kids and too late in summer, I've had to change my holiday. I work for the NHS, so I've had to change my holiday that way. I couldn't quarantine when I get back. So yeah, this is it for us this year.
It's too risky to commit to an overseas holiday right now, in my opinion. It's too much of an effort to get tested.
I just feel a bit safer in my own country, quite frankly, at the moment.
Even though they make those changes, they can make the changes again.
These changes are for England. Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland are yet to say if they'll follow. There are new additions to the green list, including Germany, but of the 7 countries added, only 2 will allow in non-vaccinated tourists without quarantine. Spain is still amber, but the government is advising passengers to have the more expensive PCR test rather than the cheaper lateral flow test before they depart for the UK.
What we do want to do is just be able to work with the clinicians, with the experts in Spain in order to just keep a very close eye on this beta variant that we already know so much more about now, and PCR tests enable us to do that.
Labour have argued that the government are still overcomplicating travel.
Having this confusion, having these changes country by country, almost on a weekly basis now, does not help the industry, it doesn't help passengers, and it doesn't help instill confidence in the government.
Some countries are going from red to amber, including the UAE. It means Neil, who lives in Dubai, will be able to see his 1-year-old grandson for the first time in a year.
Despite the anger I feel towards the government, I can now put that behind me and we can now look forward and we can travel. So that's really good. And we can almost get our lives back to a form of normality of being able to see our friends and family.
Country by country, more of the world is opening up to UK travellers. But well into summer and after months of uncertainty, the question is how many will want to make the trip. Caroline Davis, BBC News.
And the other main news on the pandemic today is that all 16 and 17-year-olds in the UK will be offered a COVID vaccine in the coming weeks. England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland have all moved quickly to approve the recommendations by vaccine experts. Around 1.5 million teenagers could receive the Pfizer vaccine and, crucially, they will not need parental consent to take part. And it leaves the prospect, at least, of the over 12s being included at a later stage. Our health editor Huw Pym has the latest.
Lucy, who's 16, says she and her mother are celebrating. She's had COVID twice and she was disappointed she couldn't get vaccinated. But that will now change.
When I heard the news, I was really excited. It's made me really happy.
Punching the air, we were in the car.
Yeah.
So she was just like, yes!
The move follows advice to ministers from experts on the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation.
Vaccination of children and young people can bring benefits to other people, such as adults, and including parents and grandparents. But at the forefront is the health and the benefits to children and young people themselves.
But only last month, the JCVI said the benefits did not outweigh the risks.
The summer wave, as we are experiencing now, was also quite uncertain about 4 weeks ago, and now we have more information on that. So it's not just new data on one point, but it's new data across a range of factors that influence advice.
The committee had looked at more vaccine safety data following reports in the US of young people getting heart inflammation after receiving the Pfizer and Moderna jabs. But for 12 to 17-year-olds, it was fewer than 10 in a million after first doses, and most recovered quickly. Ministers in the 4 UK nations have all said that Pfizer jabs will now be offered to all 16 and 17-year-olds, following the advice of the experts.
They are all at one on this, that this is absolutely the right thing to do for all 16 and 17-year-olds. Of course, there's no compulsion in this, like all our vaccination offer. It's something for people to consider.
The Health Secretary said the rollout in England would start later this month, led by the NHS, but with no precise details yet. The drive to get 18-year-olds and over vaccinated continues. As for 16 and 17-year-olds, NHS leaders say up until now they've always followed JCVI advice and implemented any changes as quickly as possible. Under the law, this teenage group won't have to have parental consent to get a vaccine. We asked people in Weston-super-Mare how they felt about it.
I think it's a good idea, because especially since a lot of 16 and 17-year-olds are like the main people who are like constantly with each other and going out.
I mean, the only reservation is that down the line you could find out something's wrong with it and you never know.
I'd want to know a lot more about what the side effects might be before we went ahead.
Countries like the US and France are already vaccinating children as young as 12. That is possible in the UK for that age group if they have serious medical conditions or someone in their family does. But the rollout to all 16 and 17-year-olds will be a significant step, with school and university terms not far off.
And Huw is with me now. So you've spelled out the main policy there, Huw. What about the unanswered questions? Because there are quite a few, aren't there? What do we make of those?
Well, Huw, there's been a broad welcome for today's move, but yes, there are some outstanding questions. For example, why did the JCVI change its advice in a matter of weeks, having said at the end of July that actually the health benefits did not outweigh the risks, they'd keep it under review. Now there's more data, they say, reducing safety concerns and showing the spread was much more rapid amongst younger age groups, so there was more of a justification. People want to see that data, and some are saying, why did the JCVI not act sooner? Then there's the issue of the second doses for 16 and 17-year-olds. There was no clarity about that. We were told it could be 12 weeks or more while data was being studied, although officials did say this was not a one-dose strategy. And then what about 12-year-olds and over? Well, in the US, Canada and France, for example, there are routine vaccinations in that age group. It was very much left on the table as a possibility for the UK, but with no actual commitment on that. And against this backdrop, the World Health Organization has said to the richer countries, lots of these rollouts should be paused, including booster jabs, to allow the developing nations, low-income countries, to catch up and vaccinate their populations.
Huw, once again, many thanks. Huw Pym, our health editor. And so let's take a quick look then at the latest statistics. The number of daily coronavirus cases reported has risen today for the first time in nearly a week. The latest official figures show there were 29,312 new cases. In the latest 24-hour period last Wednesday, there were just under 28,000. There have been an average of 26,330 new cases per day in the past 7 days. 119 deaths were recorded in the past 24 hours. That's an average of 81 deaths a day in the past week. The number of people in hospital with COVID seems to have levelled off at just under 6,000. Almost 89% of UK adults have now had their first vaccination, and just over 73% are now fully vaccinated. Turning to the day's other main news then. The sprinter from Belarus, Kristina Timanovskaya, who refused orders to fly home from the Olympics early because she feared for her safety, has arrived in Poland this evening after being granted a humanitarian visa by the Polish government. Earlier today, the most prominent opposition leader who's left in Belarus, Maria Kolesnikova, appeared at the start of her trial, which is being held in secret. And she's accused of plotting to seize power from President Lukashenko, whose regime is widely condemned for human rights abuses. From Minsk, Sarah Rainsford sent us this report.
Kristina Timanovskaya left Japan with her Olympic dream shattered, but her route to safety secured. The Belarusian athlete says she just wants to run. Her life was sport, not politics, until a row with her coaches left her too scared to go home. But here, inside Belarus, state television has slammed her claims as cheap hype. The only thing Timanovskaya won in Tokyo, this presenter says, is a Polish visa. On the streets of Minsk, though, we did find sympathy for the sprinter who's fled, because there is zero tolerance of dissent here now. We're all afraid, Dmitry says. Me too sometimes, because the situation is unstable. The danger is real. We passed the prison where opposition activists have been locked up since mass protests last year. But somehow Maria Kolesnikova is still smiling. The protest leader appeared in court today, charged with plotting to seize power. She and a fellow activist are facing 12 years behind bars. Maria's father brought her flowers, but had to pass them on via her lawyer. Alexander hasn't been allowed to see his daughter for 10 months, an extra punishment. Well, there's a small group of friends and family and supporters who've turned up here outside the court, but the trial's been declared closed, supposedly for security reasons, and none of these people are going to be allowed inside. They told me that's because there is no evidence. They believe this trial's all about scaring critics into silence.
The protests have stopped, but do you feel like people in Belarus are following what's happening here?
They are inside. So today we have the legal process not only for Maxim and Maria. We have the process about Belarusian people, actually, and Belarusian rights.
And the woman who wanted to change Belarus did this dance of defiance. For her dad, it was a chance to smile. It just shows how free she still is inside, he told me, despite everything. Well, the man at the heart of all of this, the strongman leader of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, has now announced what he's calling a big conversation for early next week, when he'll face, really for the first time, questions about the disputed elections and the protests and then the wave of repression that's followed here. But he's announced that for the one-year anniversary of that disputed election that brought him back to power here in Belarus and then led to the biggest opposition protest that this country has ever seen.
Sarah, many thanks again for the latest there in Minsk, our correspondent Sarah Rainsford. Now, the BBC understands that the Rugby League World Cup is set to be postponed until 2022. The tournament, which was won in 2017 by Australia, was due to be held later this year in England, but plans were thrown into disarray when Australia and New Zealand withdrew a fortnight ago. Organisers are expected to make a formal announcement tomorrow. Now, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, has said that people will find it a bit odd and a bit strange, in her words, that the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has not accepted her invitation to meet during his two-day visit. Mr Johnson denied that he'd turned down an invitation. His visit to Scotland comes ahead of the Global Climate Conference to be held in Glasgow in November. Our Scotland correspondent James Cook has more details.
This is Boris Johnson reminding us that he is Prime Minister of the entire United Kingdom. Policing in Scotland is usually a matter for the Scottish Government.
You'll be on the ground for COP26, what we're going to need.
But with Glasgow soon to host a crucial climate conference known as COP26, Mr Johnson made this unusual visit to Police Scotland's headquarters to see preparations for himself.
It's going to be a massive effort for the whole of the country. For Police Scotland, obviously going to be in the lead, but they're going to be supported symmetrically by 7,000 other officers from around the UK. The government of the UK, the Scottish government, at all levels work together on the things that matter to the people of our country.
Scotland's First Minister, meanwhile, was just down the road, meeting not Boris Johnson, but little Emma. It looked like fun, but was Nicola Sturgeon secretly annoyed that the Prime Minister hadn't joined her for their own fireside chat?
There's a lot for us to cooperate on. So, missed opportunity, but that's on him. I stand ready to work with however I can to get Scotland through COVID and into recovery.
Mr Johnson says he hasn't, in fact, declined the offer of a meeting and is always delighted to see Ms Sturgeon, although he surely can't have fond memories of the last time they met in Edinburgh. Back to today, though, and look who else is in town. That's the leader of the opposition strolling around this Glasgow park. Scotland was once a Labour stronghold, but an SNP surge threw rocks in Sir Keir Starmer's path to power. So would he ever do a deal with the SNP to get into Downing Street?
There will be no coalition into that next general election, no coalition coming out of it. My central message will be we need a strong Labour government to build that better future coming out of the pandemic, to deal with the climate crisis.
It all feels rather like a campaign, although he is trying to avoid one, refusing to accept there should be another independence referendum anytime soon. This trip is designed to show a UK government deeply committed to Scotland's future and deeply involved in this nation. But the choice of messenger is controversial. Boris Johnson is not necessarily the most popular politician in Scotland, to put it mildly, and his visit does risk backfiring and perhaps even stirring up more support for independence. James Cook, BBC News, Glasgow.
Now, it's been a record-breaking day for Team GB at the Olympic Games in Tokyo, boosting Britain into 4th place in the overall medal table, with 15 gold medals in total. Hannah Mills and Ailey McIntyre won gold in the sailing, and that makes Hannah the most successful female Olympic sailor of all time. Our sports editor Dan Rowan reports on the sailing triumph.
British sailing making a splash at these games yet again. After a performance as sparkling as the waters of Enoshima Harbour, Hannah Mills and Ailey McIntyre able to celebrate Team GB's 3rd victory of the Olympics here.
The world #1 pair, will it be gold?
It had never really seemed in doubt. Having taken a healthy 14-point lead into today's medal race, the British pair only needed to finish in the top 7 to clinch gold.
They're still pushing for every bit of speed they can find.
After silver in the 470 class at London 2012 and then gold in Rio, Mills had teamed up with McIntyre, whose father won an Olympic sailing title in Seoul 33 years ago. Having sat in 2nd for much of the race, the pair slipped to 5th, but it was still more than enough.
It is gold for Great Britain.
This, what a 5th medal of these games meant to the British team.
Could be pretty torrential from BBC News at 6. I'll be back at 10.
They've done it.
Now BBC One, it's time to join the BBC News team's reign.
Olympic gold for Team GB. It had already been a fantastic regatta for Britain.
Today at 6.
It's just got even better.
It's over.
Mills, who'd been one of Team GB's flag bearers at the opening ceremony, now the most successful female sailor in Olympic history.
And England's test series against India starts collapse.
Just every day.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, the Olympic dream is over for Katarina Johnson-Thompson in Tokyo.
Yeah, the emotion of just, we've done it. It's over. We've done what we came here to do.
I can't believe that this has happened. I think I've dreamt about my entire life with my dad, and it's such an amazing feeling, and I just can't wait to have it around my neck.
Mills' friends and family, meanwhile, watching on from the yacht club in Cardiff Bay, where the 33-year-old had first learned to sail.
I was just so relieved for them, both. They've worked so hard. They have tried every different approach to tactics, communication and anything else they possibly could to give them that extra little edge. And it was just amazing.
Olympic champion, Great Britain.
Today's victory ensures that Britain finishes as the top sailing nation for the 5th time in the last 6 games, one that cements Mills' status as the greatest her sport has seen. Dan Rowan, BBC News, Enoshima Harbour.
And 13-year-old Sky Brown became Great Britain's youngest ever Olympic medalist after winning bronze in the women's park skateboarding. Her stunning performance comes just a year after she suffered serious injuries in an accident during training. Our sports correspondent Natalie Perks has the story.
Sky Brown will take bronze.
She's already lived her young life in the spotlight.
13 years of age. There's Stu, her dad.
But for the girl born in Japan, draped in the British flag, this was the best feeling in the world.
So much hype, but the talk is over.
The judges were looking for difficult tricks, quality and consistency. Sky Brown has a giant trick bag.
Strap yourselves in, here we go, straight in with that.
All she needed was a smooth run.
Oh, going for that kickflip Indy. We knew it was going to come out.
Not ideal, but with 3 runs allowed, there was still hope.
She's let it go again! Missing the kickflip Indy. On, the pressure is on that 3rd and final run now.
Time for a pep talk. And in the searing heat of the Ariake skate park, one British teenager shook off the nerves and kept her cool.
There's the kickflip Indy, that's what we needed. There's the kickflip fakie, hands in the air, yes Sky!
3rd time's a charm. Team GB had everything crossed. Only the world champion could deny her a medal now.
Not faved. Oh! Just missed.
The bronze was in the bag and history was made. And as the tears flowed, the camaraderie was clear. Friends and teenage girls living out a dream.
It's fun. It's so cool because I got to be on the podium with my friends, Kokona Sakura, and just being in Tokyo and eating my favorite food, spending time in the village. This is honestly one of my best memories.
Sky said she simply wanted to come here, have fun and inspire girls around the world. Britain's youngest ever medalist did all of that and so much more.
She was born in Japan to mum Miyako and her British father Stu. At the age of 10, British skateboarding spotted her talent and saw an opportunity.
Daddy, look at this!
When I filmed with her in LA in 2019, she had her head and heart firmly set on her Olympic dream. But it almost didn't happen when last year she fell 15 feet while her dad was filming. She was airlifted to hospital with skull fractures and broken bones, with doctors saying her helmet saved her life.
Every time she goes in the air, I flinch, I can't watch it, my wife can't watch it. I was just telling her, you're an amazing skater and the Olympics doesn't define you. And the fact that you're going for it is what skateboarding's about. It's not about holding back, it's about going for it, and that's what Sky's about. And she went for it and she got it.
Her aim is now to qualify for Paris in 3 years' time in both skateboarding and surfing. Don't believe her? Just watch. Natalie Perks, BBC News, Tokyo.
And still in Tokyo, there was also success in the individual show jumping, a gold medal for Ben Mayer. Elsewhere, Ben Whittaker took a silver in the boxing, but there was some disappointing news in athletics, where the reigning world champion Katarina Johnson-Thompson had to withdraw from the heptathlon because of injury. Our sports correspondent Andy Swiss was watching today's events.
He once compared it to driving a Ferrari. Britain's Ben Mayer on Explosion W in a six-way jump-off for gold.
Come on, Ben, move!
And after a display of spring-heeled splendour, they were fastest.
Into the lead!
But there were still two riders to go. Could they beat Mayer's time? Well, it was oh so close.
He's just not quite made it!
And Ben Mayer has gold for Great Britain!
Delight then for the 38-year-old, and another gold to go with his team triumph in 2012. But he said he owed it all to his horse, who jumped, he added, like he had wings.
This horse is a different world. I don't even remember what I was doing in the jump off, to be honest. I had my plan, I just went, and he just gave me everything.
But another British medal hope has ended in heartbreak.
Oh, Katarina Johnson-Thompson, it all comes crashing down.
The world heptathlon champion has been plagued by injuries, and in the 200 metres, the curse struck again. Her agony was matched only by her bravery as Johnson-Thompson limped to the finish line. But after lying in 5th place, her Olympics are over in the very cruelest fashion. In the boxing, meanwhile, surely the game's most reluctant medalist, Ben Whittaker was so upset with his silver he didn't even put it on. His podium picture, perhaps not one for the photo album. He'd earlier fought for gold in the light welterweight, but after losing in the final, he couldn't hide his disappointment.
I just want to say to everybody, I don't want to look like a baby or a spoilt brat, but I'm so upset that I didn't win the gold. So to me, I feel like I've lost the gold, that's it. So I can't celebrate a silver just yet.
There was also a medal for super heavyweight Fraser Clark. A nasty cut ended his hopes of gold, but after just missing out on a place at the last 2 games, the bronze was worth the wait. Once again, though, the day's standout performance came in the 400 metres hurdles. After Karsten Volholm smashed the men's world record, America's Sydney McLaughlin did the same to the women's.
It's McLaughlin's title and a new world record!
2 new records in 24 hours. The hurdles, it seems, are proving no barrier to brilliance. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
And that's it tonight. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a very good night.